certainly honored to have Congressman Donald with us today for this very important topic of public safety. Before we get started, I want to do a couple thank yous. First of all, from Carroll Distributing, Mike Ivey, who I know is not with us today, but Mike and his team were very instrumental in allowing us to use this incredible facility and training room, and also all the things they do to support different community events around the county. So please give Mike a big round of applause. Top 40 also was instrumental in helping put this together, and I believe it's your birthday today, right?
Yes.
All right, so Sheriff Lehman is going to sing happy birthday. Todd, happy birthday and thank you. And then last on my thank you list is Representative Thomas Lloyd for everything he did to put this together. So before I introduce someone that really needs no introduction, not only our congressman, but our next governor here in the state of Florida, I wanted to just kind of tell you the purpose of this. Obviously, Florida is the law and order state. We have not only gotten that name, but we've earned that name here, and we are the model that other states follow when they are looking to problem solve. So we wanted to spend some time with Congressman Donald and talking about not only what we want to continue as that law and order state and how his plan for getting us there, but also I wanted to hear from the public safety experts that are sitting around this table from all different capacities on what their challenges are, what their successes have been, and what reading the tea leaves tells them is going to be the next obstacle or the next hurdle that we have to face. So we thought it was a great opportunity not only to engage our community, but also have these different experts sitting around the table who you'll meet here in just a minute, and hear from them what they face and the different things that they work to do. So with that, I will turn the floor over to our great congressman.
Well, first of all, thank you everybody for taking time out on this nice rainy Tuesday morning. And by the way, we do need the rain, so very grateful to the big man upstairs for bringing a little bit of rain to the forecast for our state. Before I start, I do want to make some acknowledgments. Obviously, we have Sheriff Ivey, Tyler Sawyer with us. Sheriff Flowers, Indian River County. It's great to see you, my friend. Thank you, Sheriff Flowers, for being here. Sheriff Lima, great to have you here as well. Senator Debbie Mayfield. Debbie and I go back a long way. We've known each other for a long time, so it's good to see you here, Debbie. And State Representative Paula Stark is over there. I see you, Paula. How are you?
I'm good.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for being here as well. I want to start with one basic sentiment that we need to make sure is clear. Florida is a law and order state. We will remain a law and order state. You cannot have a sound government. You cannot have sound businesses. You cannot have a civil society. You cannot have a place where kids can grow and play and learn and become adults if you do not have law and order in your streets. And I will tell a quick little history lesson. I have the honor now of serving, well, depending on your perspective, also the dishonor of serving in Washington, D.C. It's crazy there, let me just tell you. But one of my colleagues in the Florida legislature is, in the U.S. House, is the current United States Congressman Dan Webster. Dan Webster was the first Republican since Reconstruction to be Speaker of the Florida House. So that's how long Dan has been with us. And I asked him one day, I said, Dan, how did we turn Florida from a blue state? And he sat back, he looked at me, he goes, Byron, the first thing we did is we let the Democrats just fight each other all the time. He said the second thing that they did is they made sure that they promised the people of Florida that we were going to prioritize law enforcement and public safety, and we would uphold and follow the law. And that has been the standard in Florida since Republicans took control of this state. That standard will not change as your next governor. The other thing we want to talk about are a lot of the resources that local law enforcement that we're going to make sure we're going to stand behind. We were having a conversation in the back, and we were actually talking about cybersecurity. And when I was with Sheriff Ivey this morning, doing a ride-along with him, we realized that one of the municipalities was subject to a cybersecurity attack right here in Brevard County. We want to make sure that the state of Florida is providing all resources necessary to combat cybersecurity against our law enforcement professionals, against critical infrastructure. Because just please understand, there are threats to this country, and people look at Florida and they want to take us down. We want to make sure that the state government is working with our local law enforcement officials from a cybersecurity standpoint, so that they have all the tools they need to continue to protect not just their vital infrastructure, but to make sure they can deliver the mission of providing safe streets to all of you here, whether it's Brevard County or any other place in the state of Florida. The last thing I want to talk about is the current stance of Florida when it comes to immigration. We are going to continue what Governor DeSantis has started in Florida. We are going to continue to cooperate with the Trump administration and with federal law enforcement. There will be zero tolerance on this position. If you feel that you're not going to want to comply with 287G and federal law enforcement, then as far as I'm concerned, you're not able to take part in state dollars. We have a responsibility to uphold immigration law and work with the federal government. We have a responsibility to make sure that criminal illegal aliens are being deported from our state and working with federal law enforcement so that they can do their job. In short, we're not going to tolerate local officials deciding on their own that they're going to violate, federal law enforcement. And so just for people to understand, the reason why our position has to be this way is because there has to be consistency in immigration and naturalization. And for far too long in Washington, you have had Democrats play with this issue, and they tug on your heartstrings in the process. They throw our borders open and then wonder why everybody is frustrated. Well, it's just not right, and it's not fair. It's not right to the American citizen. It's not fair to the legal immigrant who comes through the right way with their families, working hard, striving for American citizenship. And Florida is going to continue to lead the way of upholding the standard of legal immigration and deterring illegal immigration at every point. There has to be standards, folks. If you want a civil society, if you want a society that makes sense, if you want a state that is founded on common sense and conservative policy, that means there is a standard that must be upheld. And we are going to uphold that standard here in the great state of Florida. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and I'm looking forward to the panel discussion. So Wayne, I'm actually going to kick it back to you, and we can get started.
All right. I'd like to start, Tyler, if you want to lead us off there, start with your presentation.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Tyler's out of time.
Here we go. That's one way to keep a politician quiet is turn off the microphone.
Wait, let me see. All right, so quick story, and then we're going to be serious again. So in the Florida House, all the microphones are tied into the desk. So when there was a member who was talking too much, what they would do is they would unclip his microphone and leave it back in the holster. So when they would get recognized, they pick up the mic with no cord, and they'd be like, I can't, you're not letting me address the people. And that's what all the other members would say, because you're talking too much. That's the cue for you to sit down. Anyway, I'm just playing.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you today. Congressman, thank you for being here with us. Sheriff Ivey, thank you very much for putting this together. Congressman Donald, I look out and I see a lot of friends and neighbors. You also have a lot of our leading conservative activists here in the county. The people that knock on doors, man the tables. Connie, always out at early voting, I see you there. Thank you all for being here today. I'm very excited that you're launching this tour, Defending the Florida Dream. Defending the Florida Dream starts with keeping Floridians safe. And that's what this panel is about today. I also want to thank you and Sheriff Ivey for your steadfast support of the Second Amendment. Both of you stayed strong on the Second Amendment. It's something incredibly important here in Brevard County as people want to keep their families safe You were a leader of that in the Florida House of Representatives on permitless carry, and you consistently have voted against efforts that would infringe upon our constitutional rights. Public safety begins in our homes, where all law-abiding adults should have the right to defend themselves and their families. Congressman, that brings me to my first question. For the last several years, the Florida House has passed a bill to restore the rights of law-abiding 18-year-olds to purchase a long gun, but those efforts have stalled thus far. What's your opinion of these gun restrictions, including risk protection orders contained in the Parkland bill, and what can we look forward to under a Donald's administration?
Well, this is a great question. During the, let me say it this way. I was on the floor of the Florida House when the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting happened. I was on the floor. I remember it very clearly because I was in front of the chamber and I was having a conversation. I was looking towards the back of the chamber, and I could see Jared Moskowitz, Democrat member who lives in Parkland, lives near Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. I can remember him standing up, him being on the phone, and his entire head and shoulders just dropped. I remember it vividly. And then about 5 minutes later, the Speaker Corcoran, came and made the announcement from the rostrum that there was a deadly shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and we lost many young people. If I remember correctly, I think the count was 12 or 13, I believe is correct. The weeks that followed, there was a lot of debate about what we were going to do around school safety. Many of our sheriffs were a part of this conversation. And so through that entire debate, there were several of us in the House who were very focused on wanting to make sure that we provided security to our schools, because nobody wanted to see a tragedy like what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas again. In the bill was essentially, what the way I viewed it was taking away of Second Amendment constitutional rights of 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and 21-year-olds. In the state of Florida, their rights were taken away in that bill from being able to buy a rifle or a long gun. And the rationale was that because the shooter was 19 years old, that somehow it made it okay to take away the Second Amendment rights for any other citizen of Florida who was 19 years old. At the time, I represented Hendry County, Florida, and Collier County, Florida. I will tell you, in both Hendry County and Eastern Collier County, we have 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds who had rifles, bought rifles, helped carry them responsibly, used them responsibly, and would never ever think about using it on another human life. And so, as much as we wanted to support the school safety bill, I could not betray the Second Amendment rights of the people that I served. That was probably the hardest vote I've ever taken. Actually, if I think back now, in 10 years being elected, that was the hardest vote I've ever taken as an elected member, whether it's State House or U.S. House. Because when these tragedies come, what you need out of leadership are people who are still going to remember and protect your constitutional rights, despite everybody coming to your office, everybody coming to you with a microphone, everybody on social media begging for you to just do something. And I will argue that when elected officials are in a frenzy to do something, typically they do something very wrong. So, to the core of your question, as governor, we are going to restore those Second Amendment rights. And with risk protection orders, we are going to make sure that constitutional rights are not being violated. The Second Amendment still stands. It stands 10 years ago, it stands today, it stands at the founding of this nation, and it will stand for another 250 years in the United States of America. And I will add, we cannot be a country like this if you're not going to protect the Second Amendment. Because if you're not going to protect the Second Amendment, then how are you going to protect the First Amendment? If you can't protect those two, how are you going to protect the Fourth Amendment? By the way, in Congress, we have some stuff around FISA reauthorization we're battling out right now. If you can't protect those, how are you going to protect the Fifth? And so these are the things that I just wholeheartedly believe in that will not change. I remember I went to a dinner in Hendry County 2 months after that bill passed, and I voted against it. It was about 14 Republicans in the House of Representatives in Florida that voted no on that bill. And we all voted no because of the violation of the Second Amendment. Our current CFO, Blaise Ngolia, he voted no on that bill. We were on the floor at the same time. When I was in Hendry County, they asked me, I actually had one lady come up to me, she goes, "We thought that you were gonna vote for that bill. We could have sworn you were gonna vote for that bill." And I asked her why, and she goes, "Well, we know you represent us in Hendry County, but we also know you're from New York City, so we figured that New York City would have rubbed off on it." That's what she told me. It's a true story. And I said, "No, ma'am. I made a promise that we would uphold the Second Amendment. I gave an oath that I would uphold the Second Amendment in the Constitution. And we did it then, and as governor, we're going to make sure that those rights are restored."
Thank you, Congressman. I do want to shift gears a bit on my second question. You know, in addition to being majority leader, I chair security and threat assessment in the Florida House. And we have been tracking the PC Crimes Act that I believe that you're a sponsor or co-sponsor of, working closely with President Trump to get the out-of-control crime in the District of Columbia under control. In Florida, now, not talking about our state attorney, we have a very good state attorney, but in Florida, we have some state attorneys that have decided that they're not going to hold violent, repeat juvenile offenders accountable under the laws that we have, or there are lax prosecutions. You've addressed this in the District of Columbia. You guys are working on it with President Trump. What's your vision for Florida?
The vision is that we are going to hold people accountable when they commit crimes. Nobody can actually step away from that. Nobody can be exempted from that. You have to be accountable. If you want change behavior, people have to be held accountable. That's the way it's going to be. State attorneys, not you, Mr. Shiner, you do a great job, by the way. But if we have state attorneys in our state who are deciding that they are not going to enforce the law, they're not going to work with law enforcement to make sure that people are being held accountable, then they're going to be removed from office. There has to be a standard. There has to be a standard, and I can't stress this enough. There has to be a standard when it comes to law enforcement and when it comes to actually prosecuting crime. And so we want to make sure that the laws of Florida are being executed consistently across the fabric of Florida. Because if you allow certain jurisdictions to be weak and soft, that actually ends up being a cancer that can move through your state. I mean, I know Wayne Ivey and Eric Flowers and Dennis Lima aren't going to allow that, but you could allow that could pop up in other parts of our state. I'm specifically talking about Alachua County right now. So it could pop up in specific parts of our state. There has to be a consistent standard for the people of Florida that they can trust and they can rely on. And so that's the way it's going to be.
Thank you, Congressman. Sheriff.
Sheriff Lehman?
First and foremost, thank you so much, Sheriff Ivey, for the invitation to be here and to see the great congressman again. It's always a blessing when you take the time and effort to visit us in our home counties and our home jurisdictions to hear directly from the practitioners, and I want to thank you for this. I also recognize this is an incredibly rare opportunity to have somebody who is experienced and well-respected in Florida politics, the Florida House of Representatives, and up in Washington, D.C. as well. So I think that you're going to make a great governor for the state of Florida. My question, yes, please. My question is just really a follow-up, something that I know that you're incredibly passionate about already. Florida sheriffs are looking at the symptoms that lead to crime in the first place. Those are those underlying conditions that lead people down the path to commit crime in the first place. And I know we've had some conversations in the past when it comes to substance use, mental health, and the absence of good, solid, effective parenting. Like little boys and girls have no choice who their mommies and daddies are from the moment that they're conceived. Some of them are given an unfair shake at life. We've worked with Will Shiner and others in the Florida legislature to make sure that we crack down on drug dealers, that we can hold people that are dealing in deadly fentanyl to the highest level possible. We know also that there was an overprescribing problem in this country, that The FDA made a statement that proper use of OxyContin is less than 1% likely to become addictive, and we saw disproportionately people who were law-abiding citizens becoming addicted to a substance and then turning to street-level substances that are out there. The legislature has created laws now that we hold drug dealers accountable, but at the same time, we're getting people the help and access to health care that they need. Medical-based treatment therapy combined with cognitive behavioral therapy. Military veterans were largely overprescribed when we thought it was safe. And then, of course, the mental health crisis. Not a political statement, but sheltering in place, wearing a mask, not being around people socially has a negative cognitive effect, especially on the adolescent mind. And we're seeing suicide with young people at a record high. We're seeing all of these problems. So if you could just speak to, I know you're incredibly passionate about all of these topics, just these underlying conditions that if we get right, these folks don't end up in the criminal justice system. And we know it's just not about the person that's on the journey, that if you're the son or daughter of somebody who's incarcerated or addicted to a substance, you're more than 3 times more likely to engage in maladaptive behavior yourself. Or we raise generations of families on our tax dollars if we don't fix what's broken.
Well, listen, Sheriff Lima, one, I want to thank you for the question. 2, you're 100% right on this. We spent a lot of time, obviously, already talking law and order. Now let's talk about the human condition. A lot of heavy drug use, a lot of self-medicating comes from a lack of purpose and a lack of focus in somebody's life. And quite frankly, it doesn't take much to get there. My pastor said one time, and I remember it clearly to this day, everybody's 15 seconds away from stupid. But when you're desperate, you're 3 seconds away from stupid. And unfortunately, what does occur is that desperation and lack of purpose leads some, not all, to self-medicating in very harmful ways, whether that's marijuana, oxycodone, fentanyl. But to be blunt, a lot of times people don't even know they're getting fentanyl. It's being actually it's being put into these capsules. People are taking it without even knowing it. Cocaine, heroin, crack cocaine, methamphetamines, etc. So some of this is the work we do on the front end. We want to make sure that we're helping people get the mental health that they need on the front end. We actually want to leverage the information in our state and be able to make decisions in real time where you can see somebody starting to have some stressors in life. Maybe there was a deputy call to somebody's home. Maybe there's a child in one of our schools here in Brevard County where you realize that child's grades have fallen off a cliff. And a lot of times if a child's grades have fallen off a cliff, there's a handful of things that occurred. One, they're not showing up in class, they're not focused. Maybe there's a bullying issue or they're being harassed or etc. 2, somebody in the house has probably been arrested. 3, somebody in the house is being abusive. 4, somebody in the house is using narcotics or is using heavy alcohol use. How does the state, working with law enforcement on the local level, try to make sure we do our best to try to locate these people and actually bring the faith community in to help do some of the initial interventions before they get down the pathway of desperation, or the nonprofit community to come in. I know there was a much to do about Hope Florida last year. I do think, though, that the vision from the governor and the first lady of Hope Florida is something that can be used for the future in our state, because it's about working with the various aspects of our local communities to help people in need before they get down the road of real desperation. And once they get down that road of real desperation, unfortunately, that's when they engage your deputy, Sheriff Flowers. Or that's when they end up in our emergency rooms. Or, unfortunately, they might need Narcan or something like that, because you're having to resuscitate them on the fly. And the longer they stay down that road, then it actually increases the budgets and the demands on the state and on localities. And that last statement is not to say that we're not going to help people in need, because I do believe that there is a way where you can help people, help them get on the right track, so they don't find themselves down that rabbit hole of desperation, which is real. It's a real situation. And if we can identify some of those early markers and try to help people early on, we can help prevent a lot of that. Obviously, holding the drug dealers accountable, absolutely, we're going to do all of that. but it's also about making sure you can find those key interventions at the right times. So you can not just help that child, but help that family. If the family is stabilized, the child is stabilized. If the child is stabilized, now when they're in schools with School Board Member Wright and everybody here in Brevard County, now they're focused on their future and on their purpose. So I believe this aspect of law enforcement is not, it is about holding people accountable, that's going to be consistent, but it's also about finding the ways to help people avoid those traps and those pitfalls in life. And the last thing I'll say, it's easy to talk about this topic when you're not going through it. But if we examine our lives, we've all known somebody, somewhere, that unfortunately has gone down that line of desperation. If they break our laws, yes, we're going to hold them accountable. But there's also ways that we can try to find the various interventions that they need to get them the help that they deserve. And the last thing I'll say is, the last place we want these interventions to occur are in the county jail. Because if you talk to these sheriffs, half of their populations in our county jail are people who are addicted to narcotics and have serious mental health issues. And so we need to find ways to make sure they're getting the help that they need on the front end before they end up in the county jail.
Thank you so much. I've been working in this space for about 10 years, and I do agree that Governor DeSantis, First Lady Casey DeSantis, both of our attorney generals during that time have done remarkable work, but I've also been so incredibly impressed with your take, the conversations that you and I have had, and I think that you're going to be able to kind of continue moving that down the path, while at the same time, Will Shiner and his team lead the state in prosecutions of first-degree murder for drug dealers. It's something that I'm incredibly proud of and grateful of. So great job for you, and thank you, Congressman.
We're going to shift gears, and I'm going to ask our great CEO of our port, Captain Murray, to weigh in. I know we have, Captain, I'll probably steal a little bit of thunder here, but we have the busiest passenger port in the world right here in Brevard County. So, Captain Murray.
Thank you, Sheriff. We are, for now, the busiest port in the world for cruise traffic. Passed Miami by a small margin last year. Thank you. We passed Miami by a small margin last year, but I think that the key point is that the three largest cruise ports in the entire world are right here in Florida, between Cape Canaveral, Port Everglades, and Miami. So that is the dominant proportion. With that, we also have a tremendous amount of cargo flowing through our ports, not just people. One of the big concerns that we have on the safety perspective is the unmanned aerial systems, drones that are all types of individuals that are able to operate. And there's clear federal authority to deal with them through the FAA, but it hasn't been done yet. We also have local agencies that need to detect and neutralize drones. And just as an example, we recently had Blue Origin land a rocket offshore on a platform barge, brought it back through Port Canaveral. There were 43 drones in the air, only 2 of them were reported to us ahead of time. So who's operating those drones, we don't know. And we get that information because we happen to border the Cape Canaveral Space Force Base, and they have that information of who's in the air at any point in time. They don't have any authority over us because we're a separate entity. We're part of the state of Florida as opposed to the federal government. So there is a border between us, but we share information, and it's concerning to know that there's 41 drones flying around that you don't know who they are, particularly the national security mission of a new rocket coming through the port. That, in addition to the number of cruise guests, we say we do 9 million cruise movements a year. That's 4.5 million people coming through Port Canaveral. So you could look at any given day, we get upwards of 50,000 people coming through. So it's really concerning to have unknown people flying through our area. We also have a fuel terminal. We have liquefied natural gas bunkering on ships. So there are a lot of easy, soft targets out there, and drone flights is a big concern. So I guess my question, back in 2023, we were able to make some success with the Florida legislature on restricting drones over critical infrastructure. And unfortunately, that got changed the following year by one party, and we're still struggling with that. So my question is, what legislative initiatives or policy changes would you recommend to better support seaports with real-time surveillance capabilities, drone detection, rapid response capabilities? it's a threat. We see it as a threat. We need some support on how we can control who's in the air over our facilities at any point in time.
Well, I thank you for the question. This port security is one of the things that we've honestly not had too much thought over, but listening to what you're talking about, we want to make sure that those installations are secure. Number two, when it comes to drone movements, they just need to fly around. I mean, I don't know why this is hard. Fly around the dedicated airspace for our ports and other critical infrastructure. Because what we don't want to see happen, quite frankly, is we don't want to see essentially spying from our adversaries looking at our critical infrastructure in the state of Florida. We do not want that. We just got finished earlier talking about cybersecurity initiatives to support local law enforcement. And I would extend those same protections to our port system, because that infrastructure, let me put it to people this way. If we suffered a cyber attack on one of our installations, one of our port installations, it will drag Florida's economy to a halt. We can't afford that. We need to make sure all the resources are there so that port activity can continue seamlessly. And whatever the mission supports or the policy changes we have to do in the state of Florida level, we'll do that. The way I view all of our water ports and all of the airports as well is they're all critical to our economy moving forward. So you need them all to be operating at peak efficiency. Anything that degrades that inefficiency slows down our economy and hurts the state of Florida. And then it leaves us subject to other potential attacks, which, I don't want to fearmonger, but that's the truth. We have to always be vigilant when it comes to this space. Last thing, as the President and Secretary Rubio continue to make real-time changes in how foreign policy is working, not just overseas, but in Central America, the Caribbean, and South America, as we have more normalization with these countries. I look forward to a free and open Cuba that respects liberty and personal property rights and humanity. I think that'll be a great thing for our hemisphere, and obviously for the people who live in Cuba. But as we have normalizing relations, Florida is going to be the central hub of all of that activity. Florida will be the hub of that activity. And so what we want to make sure is that we're protecting our installations at all times.
Thank you.
All right, let's jump back across the room, and Chief Voltaire, our experienced firefighter. I know you and I have been out on many different things and working with different things, so interested to see how you fit this in.
Well, I appreciate you calling me a firefighter, not a fire chief, because that's two distinctly different things. And I'll start with the elephant in the room. The burn ban in Brevard County will remain in place even though it's raining right now. That's my number one question. But thank you for having me here today. And the fact that there's a fire chief here with 3 great sheriffs shows the partnership that we have with Brevard County Sheriff's Office, and the great things that we do together. When the community needs us, we show up in force as one team, and it's unreal. The challenges that we are facing is, I think it's the same with our brothers from the Sheriff's Office, is the state's growing so fast that new firefighters, new public safety folks, getting them in the door, the local schools are having a hard time keeping up with the growth of the state. One of the things that we've done here in Brevard County to combat that's worked out phenomenal is with Megan Wright. I saw Gene Trent and Matt Susan from the school board were here today, but in conjunction with the Brevard County School Board, we've started a sponsorship program. So we go into the local high schools, we're going to the weightlifting club. The kids in ROTC that we can sneak away from the forces, we get them over to the fire service. So we've done a great job. I think about 154 kids that we've taken out of local Brevard County schools, giving them the opportunity to go to fire school and to become members of our local fire service. But thank you. So again, great coordinated efforts that we do have here in Brevard County with all of our, all of our government officials. But that's going to be a continued challenge in all of our realms. Is as the state continues to grow, I think we're about 600 firefighters short a year throughout the state. Is the last number that I read. So I just want to thank you for your support and thank you for the support of the state of Florida for all of our public safety officials.
First, you're welcome, and thank you for the great job you're doing, especially working with the school district to find those young people to come into the field. I believe we were having a conversation outside. I believe that apprenticeships are going to be a much bigger part of the educational landscape in Florida. There are children who are in our schools every day, and I would argue waiting till high school might even be too late. This might be something we need to start in 7th or 8th grade, to not just with the children, but also with their parents, and start thinking about what are the future careers that child can step into. Obviously, going to work in the fire department is one of those. Obviously, it's a very honorable position. You guys do a great job, not just here in Brevard, but all through the state of Florida. And I think this is something where engagement with those kids, having given them an opportunity to come in and be around the fire station, be around the other guys, you actually might find some young men and women who say, you know what, I really do want to be a firefighter. But it can't, the situation we've created for ourselves is, I'm 47 years old, we sent so many people to the university system, and then they graduated. And for a large percentage of them, they are not working in the field they have a degree in. I believe it's much better working with local school districts and local schools overall. Let's find kids who actually want to do an internship or an apprenticeship with the fire station. You might find some great new recruits like you're talking about right now. I think that's a wonderful thing to do to help with recruitment. It matters for you, it matters for our sheriffs, our police departments, all across the state. Some of those fields where we know we need new talents to come in, and it's not just coming in organically, then we have to rethink how we go about that. So I commend you for that effort. I think it's spot on, and that's something we need to be looking at doing throughout the entire state. With respect to salary, let's sit down and talk through how we can address that for our firefighters. Because, like, it's raining today, but like it was a month and a half ago, when it's dry and something catches, it's you, and it's not just your department, it's other departments that, depending on how big the fire gets, they come in to support that mission to get it under control. So you guys are critical to safety in our state, and we want to be supportive of that.
So what he didn't tell you was that those recruits that got all wanted to be law enforcement officers, so couldn't pass the academy. You know I love you. All right, I'm going to ask my former boss at FDLE. She had to put up with me for 20 years, and everything I am today, she's a big part of. She was a great mentor for me, Joyce Howard.
Now, real quick, Joyce, this is your time. Because the cameras are rolling, you can go ahead and give us all the tea on Wayne.
Don't worry, Wayne, I'm not going to divulge anything. Thank you for inviting me today, and thank you, Congressman, for showing up and speaking to us down at the local level. I come from a background working for a state agency, FDLE, for 32 years, and have supported a lot of the sheriffs around this table and their agencies and city police departments. And one of the things that I saw over the years is FDLE's role. A lot of the people in the community doesn't know what's going on, but we support the cyber units, we support technology, we do criminal investigations, and we support forensics for our local agencies. And it concerns me that I would like to see it continue, that we fund that part of FDLE to the standard it needs to be, so our state attorneys can prosecute the cases that the sheriffs and the city police chiefs bring to them through forensics. Because technology is changing, as you know, being 47, every day. I used to work my job on a 3x5 card. Now everything is computerized. DNA, there's a lot of money that goes in to just processing one little drop of blood or sweat or whatever to support these important cases that we're doing. And I'd like to know how you would feel about that.
I'm fully supportive. You are correct. The landscape in law enforcement, critical infrastructure, etc., most of it is digital now, and if it's not, it's trending that way very, very fast. And we do have to acknowledge the reality that with AI, you do have the criminal element who's now weaponizing that against our law enforcement agencies, against critical infrastructure. So the state of Florida, we have to step up and keep pace with that to make sure that we're protecting, whether it's FDLE or any law enforcement agency in our state or emergency response agency in our state, so that when the time comes, unfortunately, when they have to be called upon, they are ready to deliver services. And so we're going to be supportive of that mission. We're going to make sure that that funding is there so we can keep it up. We were in the Brevard EOC earlier this morning, and we walked in to obviously the big EOC room. If you've never seen it, there's probably 150 computer stations with every law enforcement and every critical infrastructure agency being represented there. And they're all in one room so that if, heaven forbid, a hurricane or a natural disaster strikes Brevard County, there is a place that is hardened that these officials can go in order to respond to that crisis and get your community up and running as quickly as possible. When Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Irma went through Southwest Florida, I spent a lot of times in my EOCs in Collier and Lee County, respectively. So the reason I bring that up is because that infrastructure, if you have to call upon it, is critical. The gentleman that was working there this morning, I told him, I said, it's a pleasure to meet you. I hope I never have to see you again. And that's how it is when you're dealing with these cyber threats in particular. We have to fund it. We hope we never have to actually rely on it, but we have to make sure it's in place so that if somebody's trying to degrade our systems, the state of Florida has the tools and the arsenal to fight back, and that we're empowering local law enforcement with those same tools as well so they can fight back as well.
One of our great school board members. I know we have, I saw Gene and Matt earlier. You guys want to stand up and be recognized also?
Yeah, you're right under the speaker, that's why. You gotta talk low.
Megan, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for coming to Brevard on this lovely day, Congressman. I'm trying to make sure I don't point this microphone at the ceiling, speaker. Thank you so much. We do appreciate, having the opportunity to sit down and talk to you. From a school board member's perspective, we're very grateful in Brevard County. We have an amazing partnership with the Brevard County Sheriffs. I don't think we have a single vendor that invests as much money, specifically, resources into our school system as Mr. Ivey does. So thank you so much for all that you do. Really, one of the challenges, give him a round of applause, because he does deserve that. One of the challenges that I see from my seat for students and risks that we see as far as safety and security is their access to cell phones and applications that really heavily influence them. We have taken a stance in Brevard County going bell to bell, no cell in our district, and we've seen tremendous strides because of taking a hard stance that we have. But I believe from the state's perspective, it would be wise that we look at figuring out a way to limit their access to certain applications that have heavy influence over them and influence them to do things that lead them down the road of trouble many a times. One of the other struggles that we see in Brevard is vaping. Vaping has become the new struggle that I think every school district around the state is witnessing. Cigarettes are no longer an issue. It is now all about vapes, and a lot of times these children have no idea what is inside of the vape that they get their hands on that could lead them into all kinds of trouble. So a harder stance on maybe penalizing the individuals who are selling these vapes, that would be something I could see very beneficial to our district. But we're grateful. We've taken huge steps here, and thanks to the families that, of Marjorie Stone and Douglas that have come forward and given suggestions to the districts around the state. We are safer than we've ever been, but I say that to say it's always evolving, right? So the investment into public school safety security, I hope that continues and increases so that we can make sure that our children are going home safe every single day when they're in our school.
Well, listen, thank you for all your hard work on the school board. Really appreciate that. I agree with you about school safety. We're going to make sure that the resources are available so that our children are safe. I go back to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting. Nobody wants to have to live through that again. Nobody wants to see that, especially the parents, obviously. I have 3 sons. I want my sons to come home from school. Well, the oldest graduated college now, so he's an adult. He's almost off the payroll, almost. but he's working very hard, and we're very proud of him. Two, to vaping. This is a serious problem. One of the main issues, and you touched on it, is our kids are buying these vapes and they're smoking them, and they have no idea what's actually in them. In the state, I know the state made a real dent at addressing this, and basically created, I believe, Debbie, to correct me when I'm wrong, but the list was essentially like a ban list of what could not be sold. The problem with the ban list of what cannot be sold is that a lot of these vapes are made in China. So all they did was look at our list and say, okay, well, I'll just change it to this. And then it comes in and it's sold. We have to actually reverse the polarity on that. It needs to be an approved list of what can be sold in Florida, so we can make sure these Chinese vapes are not in our gas stations, not in our smoke shops, where our children are getting them and they're getting addicted to this stuff. And it's a real problem. The vaping issue is a real problem. So that's what I want to see, is us actually laying out an approved list of what can be sold in the state of Florida. The last piece on social media. I know the legislature is trying to make some moves on this. I commend you and your school district of basically saying, no, you can't use a cell phone in class. We've already seen that that's actually helping to improve classroom outcomes when kids are not on their phones, because it's a distraction more than anything else. Yes, they're addicted. Unfortunately, the social media algorithms, they're addicted to them. And so I think that's why you're seeing Meta and other providers are trying to come out with teen accounts now. And I think that's something that the state should definitely be pushing to make sure that up until a certain age, that these accounts are managed by parents. Parents are approving them, parents have full access to them. So that way the parents can monitor that access at home and help us monitor it in schools. So really supportive of what you're doing here, making sure kids aren't having cell phones in the classroom. Like I said, I have 3 sons, been through K-12 twice now. On my last son, who's in the 8th grade, we don't let him have a cell phone in the classroom. And in his school, if he has it, he gets in trouble, I get a notification, and then he and I have a talking to. And it's not a talking to, folks. I'm a disciplinarian, so it's a little different. But I think that's all critical, so we very much support you and the Brevard County Schools and what you're doing.
Great public defender, police Travis, who has the task of everything our state attorney is working on. He's sitting across from him, so does a great job for us here. Works with us every day.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, Congressman Donald, for being here in Brevard County speaking on public safety. The biggest challenge that the public defender, and I'm sure the state attorney has right now, is hiring lawyers. It's become incredibly difficult. It really started with COVID. Before COVID, I would typically get 6 or 7 applicants for every open position. And COVID changed everything. In the last 6 years, I'll be lucky if I get 1 application for an open attorney position. And I know that as governor, you won't be the legislature, it won't be your decision on the funding of the state attorney and public defender offices, but when you are governor, I do hope that you will ask the legislature to properly fund the state attorney and public defender, because without the prosecutors prosecuting and without the public defenders defending, the convictions will not stand on appeal. So it's very important that the criminal justice system. The public defender represents about 70 to 80% of all the defendants in the criminal justice system. We have a huge caseload, which makes our representation very cost effective per case. One thing under President Trump, which has really helped actually the public defender caseload, is his illegal immigration enforcement. And we've had hundreds of ICE detainers, which are now honored by the sheriff, which leads to the removal of illegal aliens from the jail and their deportation, which has actually lessened our caseload quite a bit. So my question is this: the Florida Highway Patrol has, by a very large margin over all of their law enforcement agencies in Florida, made the most arrests of illegal aliens in Florida under its 287G immigration enforcement agreement with the federal government. The Florida Highway Patrol is in the executive branch of government under the direct authority of the governor of Florida. As Florida governor, would you consider asking the legislature to increase the size of the Florida Highway Patrol to increase its number of arrests of illegal aliens in Florida?
That's a great question. I've not been asked that one before. The short answer is yes, I would. We want to make sure that Highway Patrol has all the resources it needs as well. I mean, like it all comes together: Highway Patrol, FDLE, Sheriff Departments, Police Departments, etc. We want to make sure that that's as robust as possible. The point you make about it actually taking a load off of the county jail system, which actually helps with your docket, and I'm quite sure the docket of the state attorney, is one well taken. One of the things that we want to make sure we look at, one of the things we want to make sure we look at is, quite frankly, the dollar ratio impact of expanded FHP actually engaging those detainers directly with ICE, and the load that comes off of the county jail systems and also the public defender systems and the state attorney systems. And I think in understanding that analysis, that ratio there, that will really tell us about how we can augment the amount of personnel we bring into FHP in order to continue that mission. By the way, FHP will continue its mission under 287G. That is going to continue. The question is, how many officers will we bring in, and what's that sweet spot to get those case loads down that your office has to deal with and the state attorney's office has to deal with. All right.
My son's a sergeant with the Highway Patrol, so if he could get a raise too, that'd be nice. All right. Rachel, I know you often call me your favorite constitutional officer.
I thought that was me.
No, I thought it was me. So,
It's all of you.
Yes.
What are we talking about?
Rachel.
So thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to us and hearing some of our questions and maybe frustrations for our offices. And as Blaze just said, and spoke for the state attorney's office and the public defender, funding for our offices are very hard. As the clerk of court here in Brevard County, we see time and time again we are forgotten. Up in Tallahassee, I don't know why. I think people don't realize that the clerk's office is like an octopus. We are the center, and all the tentacles come in. Everything that people talk about today, from risk protection orders to mental health cases to children, juvenile cases, everything runs through my office. Worked very closely with the sheriff and with his duties of civil services. We have that, we have small claims, we have injunctions, all of these factors that play into our office, but the funding is never there for the clerk's office. Years ago when Article 5 took place, it was a detriment to our office and us being able to provide what I would say better services to our community because of the hindrance of that. And so I'm wondering, as the clerk for Brevard County and my employees being heavily invested in this and trying to bring them more awareness of how this all takes place and where funding comes from and what's so important about our legislators and our senators and the laws that we make and why we go to Tallahassee and why we do that. How you feel and what you feel you would be able to do for our offices to get us the funding that can sustain the cases, for the sheriffs, they're holding an inmate, we're taking them back and forth with their paperwork, but then at the end, we don't stop there. Once that inmate goes on to Department of Corrections, now we're going back with Department of Corrections. All these inmates are bringing in motions to our office per se. They've all become lawyers all of a sudden in jail and prison, and so we are bombarded by their filings, then we're bombarded by all the filings. It's just an upkeep. So that's my question. Can I add one thing? I'm sorry, can I add one thing?
Please.
And for the clerks, also, it's not just the criminal side. I was talking to Debbie a few minutes ago and Sheriff Lima. It's also about the wards in our counties. We oversee these guardianship cases, and in here in Brevard, we have a huge, what I like to call mature population. And that comes under our umbrella, and I take that very serious. It's millions and millions of dollars that we're overseeing. And luckily, the laws allow us to have ex parte communication with the courts. And that's very important. And then we work with the sheriff's office and their economic crimes. And we here in Brevard the sheriff's office has made some very big arrests in wards being taken advantage of. And that's another thing that is lacking, the funding. And I don't think people recognize we have over 1,000 duties as clerks, and I don't think they recognize what all we're responsible for and what we need.
Well, first of all, you are correct in all the things that the clerk of the court does. Two, when it comes to funding, here's what we end up running into. By the time the legislature, and I've been in it so I know, by the time the legislature starts parsing up all the various aspects of state government, and you're down to, I think the impasse between, in this current budget, it's about $1 billion or so, I think is the impasse. Once you start getting down to that, then it's about, okay, who's going to get what? And how are you going to spread apart the rest of that pie? The clerk's office for a long time has really been last links. You guys have kind of been at the end of that spectrum. I think, so in terms of looking at the funding, yes, we have to look at that, but I'm just gonna be straight with you, it gets tough every single budget year. Between Everglades Restoration, law enforcement, the county jail system, DJJ, ACA, Department of Education, you start going down that list, the state's budget this year, at top is gonna be $115 million. I think the House is 114, the Senate's 115, we'll figure out where they land. When you start going through all the different aspects of what we fund, it makes it difficult when you get to the clerks. One of the things I want to see happen, if we're going to talk about more money for the clerks, what I want to see happen is modernization of the entire clerks' technical infrastructure. All of your compatriots, you guys are all very siloed. But like you said, you actually do work where there's handoffs into other counties. And so because you guys are siloed in your apparatus, those handoffs obviously require a human logistical effort in your office and in the other office. So what I would want to see is the clerks operating on one system, that the information flow is very seamless and where you're able to make decisions a lot more in real time. Some of the stuff that Sheriff Lima and I talked about and how you do some of these early interventions, some of that data is with the clerks. Actually, a lot of that data is with the clerks. And so we think it's important that not just the Sheriff's Department, but the clerk's office and other offices can actually leverage that information to make better decisions that can impact the lives of our people, especially in the Guardian programs and other programs as well. So I think the fair exchange is, if we can get the clerks to agree to be on one system and operate in that system and leverage that information, then I think you can get buy-in from me and from the legislature and say, okay, we are going to fund this upgrading of the system, which makes the information in the clerk's office, and all 67 of them, actually be more digestible and operational, so we can make better decisions with respect to public policy in Florida. Is that fair?
Absolutely. We are. Absolutely, we are 67 counties that seem not to live in Florida together. You are correct. We all have different systems, and we don't even have the same codes for the state attorney's office, FDLE, and the sheriff's office. So I'm completely with you. I think a task force or something to make that happen is what is needed.
Well, one thing to piggyback off that, the next governor gets to sit what's called the Government Efficiency Task Force. It's in the state's constitution. So you could make the argument that Florida's been Doge before Doge was a thing. But the Government Efficiency Task Force gets sat next January. One of the missions that I'm going to have for the Government Efficiency Task Force Committee, however we label it in the Constitution, is they are going to be responsible with doing a complete full review of all internal governmental operations at the state and local level, and then also coming back with action, and I stress this, actionable punch lists that can actually get done, so we can make sure that the state's internal information flow is far more efficient than it is today. I want to see a state of Florida that moves at the speed of business, not at the speed of government. And we actually have a great state government. And we have a great state government. but it's still government. And I think the future of Florida's government is going to be being incredibly transparent and incredibly responsive, not just to the people of Florida, but also to the decision makers of Florida, because we all care about the same things, but we just have different responsibilities within the framework of Florida's government. I want you to be able to get Sheriff Ivey and Sheriff Lima on the phone and say, hey, look, here's what we have. And they can make those decisions in real time. Where we get bogged down, and you just said it, your clerk has a different set of systems from Lima's clerk. Either one of you are on the codes with the state attorneys, and so you actually need more resources to try to use that information, as opposed to modernizing your systems and then actually having your funding going towards that modernization and support staff around that, so you can be more efficient with the decision making. That's where I want to see the state go, and I think that's something we could definitely work on together.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm going to ask our state attorney to weigh in and just remind everybody, we are getting short on time, so you guys can keep it concise, but.
That's code for the sheriff needs to eat lunch.
No, I would just say that outward.
I thought you were being polite for a change. I don't know.
We would not start.
Congressman Donalds, I'd like to thank you for coming here today, just like everybody else, and to listen to our concerns that we have and what we do every day and hear us. I'm incredibly lucky to work with these two gentlemen over here, Sheriff Lima and Sheriff Ivey, in a unified mission for public safety and all those things. And you know, everything that has been tasked to my office, from either the governor's office or the Constitution or my oath, I take very seriously and I work really hard at. You know, Mr. Tredis said it, you know, the biggest hurdle that we have as prosecutors, it's not unique to me, it's across the other 19 circuits, is getting in quality lawyers and quality lawyers that want to stick around. You know, I tell my young lawyers when I hire them that, you know, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to train you to be a really good litigator, you're going to go out and make some money, or I'm going to train you to be a good prosecutor and you're going to stay here like I did, and you're going to be committed to the cause. You know, my journey is really unique to get to where I am. I was the victim of a violent crime, and I said back then that I wasn't brave enough to do what these men and women do every day, to put their necks on the line. I wish I would have met a fire chief. I could have taken that gig on maybe. But I made that decision to be a prosecutor and to do this, to represent victims in court, and to do this at a high level as a litigator and prosecuting crimes, and I'm proud to say that I achieved that. The concern that I have is the same as Mr. Tredis, and understanding that you don't control the budget, that Senator or Representative Soroy and Senator Mayfield, you know, have more of a say in that as that ball gets going, and they've been very, very good to public safety here locally. But making sure that that's part of your agenda, because you can't say public safety and fund law enforcement and fund FDLE, which it's critical. I mean, we're waiting 6 months for results on some things to prosecute cases, and then not fund the court side of it, the prosecutor side of it, because funding, giving the sheriff all the funding in the world to do these homicide investigations for drug overdoses, but then not turning around and funding the state attorney's office to see that through, is quite frankly, it's an exercise in futility, because we need quality people here to do this job. And frankly, starting salary, I think by statute, is $55,000. The Prosecutors Association and the Public Defenders Associations have agreed to reallocate our funding within our circuits to start them at 70, and that's with a graduate level degree. Some of these law enforcement agencies are starting their sworn officers at 18, 19 years old at that same number. So it becomes incredibly difficult for us to be competitive and to keep those quality people in an effort to keep the people we serve safe and to finish that through and make sure convictions stick. So very long way of getting to, can you remember and can you take that position where you're going to advocate for public safety at that level all the way through till the end? Because arrest is not enough. I've heard Sheriff Lima say this many times. We can't arrest our way out of this. We have to fund the other aspects of it. And so it's a very long statement by me, but there's a question in there somewhere, and if you could comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
There he goes to the mic. So how much, let me answer this question, and I would actually also ask Mr. Travis as well. Starting salary, where do you need to be?
I mean, loaded question, right? So if you're asking me, I think.
You asked me, so
Right,
I'm asking you.
So I think to be competitive with a graduate level degree, these are people that have gone 7 years of higher education, that have committed their lives. They've gone to their 4-year school with a direction. They've then gone to law school with a direction of doing something. To be competitive with the private market, probably right around $100,000 a year.
Mr. Travis?
I think the public offenders in the legislature this year are seeking an $85,000 minimum salary. Private firms, from what I hear, interviewing law students is typically $90,000 and above, and sometimes much more than that. But another huge difficulty is, despite the salary, a lot of private firms now offer lawyers remote work at home, which will never happen in my office. And that makes it even more difficult. But to answer your question, $85,000 is what's being requested this year.
Okay, all right. That's what I needed, so that way, when we start really digging in and looking at the state's budget, we can figure out, if it's not an immediate year one situation, how do we ramp up while taking care of the other responsibilities that the state has? I will also add that support for your mission is critical. A lot of state resources do come in through the state sales tax. Nothing will diminish state sales tax receipts to the state of Florida than having, quite frankly, law and order issues in our state. So the law and order mission, obviously, sheriff, deputies, police departments, your mission, public defense, FDLE, highway patrol, etc. That mission all goes towards supporting the state's economy. And if we don't do that, then we're going to see a decrease in the state's economy. For a myriad of reasons. Lack of tourism will be probably the first step, and then some others as well. All right? Okay.
So, Mr. Mayfield has actually wanted to announce that she's going to increase Rachel's budget.
She just became my favorite. There we go.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you for putting this on. Thank you, Representative Soroy, for putting this on, and thank you, Congressman Donalds, for being here. Sitting here as a state official, I have learned a lot as well. When it comes to the children, and you're going to have a great partner. And I don't mean a great partner in the Senate and the House. I mean a great partner with your wife, Erica. She is, I remember working with her on Common Core way back when. And she is going to be a great partner with you to accomplish the things that we need to get accomplished in the state of Florida. I love your government efficiency. I have been hounding on that for years. The only way that we're going to be able to fund some more money toward the state attorney, the public defender, the clerk's office, if we get it through efficiency. Because we can't fund our way out of this, just like you can't arrest your way out of something. It has to be done through efficiency. That's how you're going to get there. When we talk about education, Dr. Ritchie's in the room with Eastern Florida State College. And, our public safety training that we have is critical, because I agree with you. Not every kid is going to go to college. And Secretary Rubio said this many years ago, and I agree with him, is that welders, do you want to go to college and have a $60,000 or $100,000 debt when you come out? Or do you want to go to a trade school, like being a welder or a plumber or a contractor, and come out making $70,000 to $100,000 a year? And it's a mindset that we have to change to let kids know it is available and it is out there. And I'd love to be able to make sure that we continue to fund those type of programs on the state level to give the kids, because everybody wants a purpose in life, and you're absolutely correct. None of these kids woke up one day and say, oh, I'm going to be a drug dealer. They need a purpose in life, and it's our responsibility to give them that purpose in life to make them successful. On immigration, we need to continue down that path, and I know you will. And I love, from the public safety standpoint, of making sure that all our public safety people are kept safe. And I love Sheriff Ivey's quote that has just went internet crazy when it was, you heard a law enforcement officer, you're going to be graveyard dead. Now, I don't know how much deader you can be in graveyard dead. And I know that you're going to continue on that path as well. Social media is going to be a big issue with our kids. They have issues in schools with them. Parents have issues with them, unfortunately. When kids spend 6 hours a day on a phone, on a cell phone, because they're being sucked in. It used to be the TV used to suck you in. Now we have social media that sucks you in. And that's going to be an issue that we're going to have to address. Cybersecurity is going to have to be an issue that we're going to have to address on it. So, Second Amendment. There's a lot of things we have to address, and I am excited. I could not think of a better partner that we could have on a Senate side or a House side than with you to drive these issues home and make them accountable. We have to be accountable. And I think you're going to hold all the legislature accountable for the work that we should be doing for the people in the state of Florida. So I can't thank you enough for being here and listening to what everyone has to say. And I look forward to working with you.
Real quick, Debbie, we've known each other a long time. I want to make sure I state this for the record. Debbie Mayfield and my wife Erica, they worked on the Stop Common Core effort. This was back 2015, 2016? Yeah, so 2013, 2014, 2015, yeah, a long time ago. So I also had to make sure I state that because, it's a campaign. People hear, she worked on Common Core. She worked on Common Core. No, Debbie and my wife were working to oppose Common Core, stop it in Florida. It was great work then, and our children have benefited from that. The other issues that you raised, Debbie, 100%. There's a lot of things that we're going to have to manage in our state. I mean, look, folks, I've been saying this a lot as I've been on the trail. Florida, best state in the country. We all know it. People are choosing Florida for a reason. We're like the '92 Chicago Bulls. That's what our state is. We're the '92 Bulls. We're the best team in the league. Everybody knows it. The question is, how are we going to go from the '92 Bulls to the '98 Bulls, where you're still dominating the league? And the way we do that, in part, is what some of the things that you talked about. We are going to have to get efficient and lean with state and governmental operations. A lot of the resources that people are on the table are looking for, let me be very clear with you. They're in the budget somewhere, in just dollars that are frankly being misallocated or not being used efficiently. And we are going to drive efficiency and responsiveness in state government. It's going to be working with our colleagues in the legislature, working with the agencies to make sure that they are motivated to make sure that we are finding those resources, using them well, and what they're not using, get that back to the Treasury. So if we have to reallocate to our attorneys or to our deputies or to equipment in the clerk's office or to the clerks at large, we can do that. But it always starts with us being an efficient government. I've been meeting with Dr. Mehmet Oz at CMS about healthcare writ large. Everybody's seen what's happened in Minnesota. But folks, there was an Obamacare fraud arrest down in Miami-Dade about a month and a half ago. Let me tell you about federal spending. It's everywhere. And there's so many misallocated payments. And it's going to be the responsibility of the state of Florida going forward that we find that money, we squeeze it out, and we use it appropriately in those avenues, or we use them efficiently in other areas to help our state continue to progress forward. In short, that's how you keep a great state a great state. And so that's going to be one of the core driving issues.
Sheriff Flowers.
Well, Sheriff Ivey, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this today. And for those who are here watching this, I just want to say it's so rare for us to get the opportunity to address you on the trail like this without you knowing what we're going to ask, right? You have no clue what I'm about to ask. We've not discussed this. We all got to sit here and ask whatever we wanted. So thank you for taking our questions in front of these folks to hear those and fantastic responses. I'm so glad, I agree with you wholeheartedly that Florida leads the way. In the same respect, California leads the way in all the things that we don't want to be, right? We're leading in the way that we want to be. And with that, one of my struggles, and I'm so glad you're talking about Parkland still, February 14th, 2017 was the day, right? We're almost 10 years removed from that. And at the 10-year mark, as we approach the 10-year mark, we still have failures in the state and in this country in our 911 dispatch center. And this is, I only speak from the heart, telling you what's on my heart and mind right now of what I'm dealing with in my county, and it's happening everywhere in the state. There are 911 calls that are placed that get routed to the wrong way, that end up at the wrong agency, that the people aren't able to get it. And Senator Mayfield, I see you shaking your head because you know there's been a bill 2 years running now to try and consolidate dispatch to get a one call, one response. It's the second year that it's not made it. I would love that when you become our governor, one of the first bills that you sign is to move forward with this to fix 911 in our state. One of the reasons Parkland was a failure, and the Parkland report says this is what we should fix. And there was all this knee-jerk reaction post-Parkland of we got to do something. And this is one of the things that could have been fixed that wasn't fixed. And so I would love to see this fixed. The other thing that I'll fight for is my dispatchers are the first responders. We have studies now that show that these folks are dealing with trauma. They take these terrible calls, they hear things, they get no closure. I would love to see Florida lead the way to recognize our dispatchers as high-risk first responders, and for us to take this seriously and fix this. We owe it to our citizens and to our tourists that when they pick up the phone and call 911, they're going to get a response, they're going to get the right person, somebody who can send them help right then and right there.
Sheriff Flowers, one, thanks for making that point about the dispatchers. That's something I didn't know, so we are definitely going to get to work on that, because you're right. Whether you're in the field or you're having to be on the call with that person who's under threat, and then your responsibility then is just to go pick up the next call, and then you just have to shift your mind. The truth is that stays with you. Mental health support for our first responders, for our veterans in Florida, and really a more robust mental health apparatus in Florida is one of the key missions that we want to make sure happens in the state of Florida. Because, our deputies, obviously I'm learning now, our dispatchers and so many others, guys, they go through so many calls, and then they're expected to just move to the next one, and then go home and see their families. And that stays with you. And so whatever help that they need, we want to make sure that help's available to them. On Unified 911, one thing you're going to learn from me, the thing that I'm very calm. I think people kind of see me, they'll see me sometimes in these congressional hearings, and they're like, how could you stay so calm? Because I'm usually very calm. The thing that pisses me off more than anything else is wasted time and inefficiency. That, it rubs me wrong. It rubs me wrong. And so when I talk about being an efficient government, this is what you're talking about and discussing is one of the things that I am talking about. And I'm going to be very blunt on this one, because we're going to have to jump in some people's cornflakes. Because I know how procurement works in the state. And everybody procures in their various areas, and I understand how that works. But if you're going to run an efficient state, there are going to have to be some procurement issues that we're going to come to a stabilized solution. I'll give you an example. When it comes to textbooks, in our state, a lot of the textbooks that are required, and Megan, you know this, are on the state's approved list. And then the State Department of Education approves a series of textbooks that are available for purchase. And then, because of that, then the local school districts then make their purchases off the approved list. I think if you're talking about Unified 911, Unified Dispatch, maybe a solution is the state, probably through FDLE, says, okay, here are the approved tools that you can then procure. And then one of the things we want to make sure is that those tools have the ability, those systems have the ability to be interoperable. And last thing I'll tell everybody, when we do these types of events, or if I do a meet the candidate and we take questions from the audience, I never know what you're asking. I don't want to know what you're asking. I want to hear from you. I really do want to think about it. I want to actually talk through that issue sometimes. So this one's much more talking because I had no idea this is where you were going. But I think going forward, that might be a solution we can pursue. But that's definitely something I'll be working with you and Wayne and Dennis and our law enforcement community to make sure we get to the right system so that your job is made easier. Because if your job is made easier, you can respond far more effectively to the people of Florida.
So we are very short on time, and we have to get Congressman to another event. But I want to close out and just say a few things. First of all, thank you to all of our panelists for being with us today and sharing your knowledge on all the different topics. We heard about technology, we heard about port security, fire, all the different things that we have, all the challenges and all the successes that we have here in our state of Florida. We are very blessed to have this time to spend with our congressman, but more importantly, I want to thank each of you for your input, for your experience, and for being here with us today. So please give them a big round of applause. As the congressman said, he had no idea what each of them was going to ask, but he wants it that way. I've seen him do that many times before. He wants to be able to just tell you what's coming from his heart, what's coming from his experience. And one of the things that I've learned in my time as sheriff and being with FDLE for 20 years is past performance predicts performance. And when you look at the success he's had, the stance that he's taken, where others folded and went home, he stood strong. Stood strong in protection of our Constitution, and stood strong in the protection of our law enforcement officers and his constituents. So I would just like to thank him, Congressman, for being with us today. Thank you for spending the time with us and for all you're going to do for us in the city. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you.